It is that time of year where we are just days away from the start of the regular season, and I could not be more excited. This is my second season creating content on this channel. I actually started the channel 1 year ago, and I guess first and foremost, I cannot thank you all enough for the love and support you've shown over this past season. It takes a lot of work putting out content, especially when you have a full-time job like myself, so I really do appreciate it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about this upcoming season and predictions for this upcoming season, because that's what we as fans do. We have our own thoughts and predictions for how the season is going to transpire, and as I mentioned in prior videos, as we get closer to the start of the season, we're going to do conference standing predictions. For each conference, all teams 1 through 15, and in this video we're going to be going over Eastern Conference standing predictions, and then I'll have another video going over the Western Conference as well. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribed, and in return I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, obviously, we had some big shakeups in the Eastern Conference this season. Damian Lillard going to Milwaukee, Drew Holiday subsequently getting moved to Boston, Bradley Beal getting shipped out to the West, Porzingis going to the Celtics. We still have the James Harden situation up in the air. Is he going to play for the Sixers? Is he not going to play? Miles Bridges being an idiot and ruining his career after being given a second chance. You get it. A lot has happened. And of course, that doesn't even factor in some of the smaller moves that were made. But regardless, it's going to be an interesting year for the East, because really, you have these two top dogs, these two true title contenders. You might be able to add a third, and then 4 through 12 is really up for grabs, with the bottom 3 looking a little more clear. And so I'll start with who I think will ultimately finish first in the conference, and that's going to be the Boston Celtics. This one really shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, it's going to be either them or the Milwaukee Bucks. But I foresee the Bucks, especially with Lillard at his age. I mean, they're going to play well this season, but they're not going to have their foot on the gas all year long. They're not going to be as concerned about seeding when they have Giannis and Dame. They're more focused on, in the playoffs, winning a championship, not finishing first in the conference. And it's why I have Boston at the top of the East. But not only that, the Celtics are incredibly deep. I mean, by adding Holiday and Porzingis, they've got a solid bench, more depth than the Bucks in my opinion. Tatum and Brown in their prime, still getting better as players as the years go on. I would expect Tatum to have an even stronger year, especially with a true playmaking point guard on their team, finally. The Celtics are going to be really good. After securing Holiday, I'm not as concerned about them losing Marcus Smart. I do think losing both Williams players, Grant and Robert, is going to be a noticeable loss, especially if Kristaps Porzingis has an injury issue, which he has had in the past. But regardless, this team, in my view, is the best team in the Eastern Conference from top to bottom. Whether they actually make it out of the East is a different story, but top to bottom, they're the most stacked and well-balanced team in the East. Not surprising, coming in at number 2 is the Milwaukee Bucks. They may not be as deep as a team like the Celtics, but purely from a top talent perspective, when you look at their 2 best players versus the Celtics' 2 best players, yeah, it's not really a comparison when you have 2 superstars, in my opinion, 2 top 10 players in the league in Dame and Giannis, 2 players who complement each other's skills very nicely. Yeah, that's a force to be reckoned with. And even if they don't go hard for the full 82 games and maybe take some games off here and there, they're still going to be at the top of the East, and it's why I have them number 2. Number 3 is where things get a little tricky and up for debate, because while I would like to say that it's going to be the Sixers because they still have one of the best players in the world in Joel Embiid, I'm still not sure about this team. Like, how bad is Harden going to make things for this organization in terms of disrupting the overall chemistry and off-court drama? How does Tobias Harris show up this season, who has expressed his displeasure and feel that he isn't as appreciated enough, and who, by the way, is also up for a contract extension? Does Tyrese Maxey take an even bigger leap than he did last year? There are just a lot of uncertainties with this team, and because of that, I'm actually putting the Cleveland Cavaliers here. Here's the thing. The Cavs are always going to be a good regular season team. They have a lot of talent, young talent. You're talking players who are mostly in their primes or haven't even entered their primes yet. They have a borderline superstar level player in Donovan Mitchell, a great front court between Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, who for Mobley, you would hope is only going to continue to get better as he enters just his 3rd season in the NBA. They added Max Strus to give them some shooting. Karis LeVert has been solid for them. I mean, the bigger question for this team, though, is whether they can actually execute and show up in the playoffs. Last season was pretty embarrassing after having one of the best seasons since LeBron James, and then they got dominated in the playoffs by the Knicks despite having home court advantage. But since we're just looking at the regular season, yeah, finishing third I think is very reasonable because they still have a lot of talent, and their talent is young enough that they'll be able to sustain winning throughout the season. Fourth, this is where I have the Sixers. Again, 4 through 12 is really up in the air, so I wouldn't be surprised if the team falls lower based on what happens with James Harden. Does Joel Embiid start getting frustrated and gives out a bombshell trade request by the trade deadline? I don't know, but the uncertainties aside, this is still going to be a strong team as long as Embiid is healthy and as long as Maxey continues to improve as we have seen him do with every passing season since being drafted in 2020. And I know I'm going to go through these kind of rather quickly, but I've got 15 teams to go through. But next up at 5th, I've got the Heat, which I know will surprise some folks because the Heat, generally speaking, don't really care about the regular season. They damn near missed the playoffs last year, but then ended up going to the finals as the 8th seed. And not only that, they had a pretty underwhelming offseason for a team that just went to the finals. They missed out on Dame, despite Dame wanting to go there. They missed out on Drew Holiday after he became available. They lost Max Strus and Gabe Vincent in free agency. But I actually think the Heat are going to show up better than expected in the regular season. Never count out Jimmy Butler. Bam has continued to get better. And you might see a more aggressive Tyler Hero after being in all of those trade rumors all off season long. I don't see them coming out of the East like last year, but they'll have a more sustained, successful season with the guys that they have on their roster, despite missing out on Damian Lillard. 6th, this is where I have the New York Knicks, and honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if you see them fall a little lower. I said this before, I'm one of the teams that I think will have a disappointing season this year. This is kind of the year where Tibbs' coaching style ages out a bit, and players begin to grow frustrated, not respond to him in the same way as they did before. I also think that Julius Randle doesn't really help this team as much as people think. In fact, he's usually been a net negative for them with his play style on the court and not playing defense and primarily just playing iso ball on offense and not getting his teammates involved. I love Jalen Brunson. I love some of the younger talent they have on their roster with Grimes, Quickly. Mitchell Robinson is an underrated big in my opinion, but I don't see this team really being that much of a threat when they don't have a deep level of talent and overall well put together roster. At number 7, I've got the Chicago Bulls. Yes, my Bulls. I know every non-Bulls fan in here is going to say this is way too high for a team that finished 10th in the East last season and didn't even make many moves last year, and other teams below them got better. Well, to that I reply, well, the moves that they made weren't substantial. They added shooting, which they needed. They added veteran leadership, which they needed, and overall defensive tenacity and high effort guys, again, also needed. Not only that, but I do believe Kobe White is in for a big season, and a big season for some of the younger players, including Patrick Williams, makes the Bulls considerably better. And most importantly, I know most people probably haven't been watching the Bulls in the preseason, but Zach LaVine, who is finally fully healthy, he was not 100% to start the season last year after coming off a scope surgery. Zach LaVine has looked great in the preseason and fully locked in. So smooth, so fluid, attacking the paint, improved ball handling, shooting. I mean, I know I'm biased, but the Bulls do still have a lot of talent. And whether the talent can actually execute and produce more wins will be another thing, but the ingredients are there. They're playing differently in terms of their overall philosophy and approach on offense, and I think the Bulls will be better than most people think. Not a top team in the East, but better than 10th. At 8th, this is where I have the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, for me, I just don't see how the Hawks really improved much from last season. Coaching is going to be key. Quinn Snyder is a better coach than Nate McMillan, but the roster construction more or less remains the same. Trae Young, yeah, he's a star. DeJounte Murray, he's a stud. But I question the overall fit and maturity between these two guys to actually lead this team to anything meaningful. This was literally the definition of a middle-of-the-road average team last season. Finished 500, they were up and down all year. They finished with a net rating of 18th in the league. Their three-point shooting profile is weak, being one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league last season, both in terms of volume and overall percentage. And they didn't really do much to address their weaknesses this offseason. So I don't have them making much headway in the East, and why I have them remaining 8th in the conference. At 9th, I've got the Pacers, a decent jump for the Pacers who missed the play-in last year. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they finished a little higher, even better than the Hawks. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton is that guy. He's really breaking out into a superstar. And you factor in the other young talent they have with Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson. They made that trade for Obi Toppin, which I actually like because I think Toppin will do well in a new environment. They still have Miles Turner, who I think is one of the more underrated bigs in the NBA, and they've got a great coach. I like this team's future, and I think you'll see a much better Pacers team this season. 10th, I've got the Brooklyn Nets as the final play-in team. I know a lot of people have the Nets higher, and I actually like the Nets' future and what they're doing. I think Bridges is going to be a star, but they're not deep enough. They're not experienced enough to make any noise in the East when, yeah, they finished 6th last year because Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving got them there before they were traded, and then they got swept in the first round of the playoffs. So no, I don't expect the Nets to be where they were last season. The bottom 5 teams I'm going to go through rather quickly. 11th, I have the Magic. I think they'll be better than last year with the increased development and improvement from some of their younger players, most notably DeFranz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, but not good enough to make it into the play-in. They're just not there yet, even though I know Magic fans think that they are. 12th, I've got the Raptors. I actually don't know why so many media publications have them in the top 10. Yeah, they have Siakam. They still have OG, Scotty Barnes. They have some nice pieces, but this team was a disaster last year in terms of how they played together on the court. Something just wasn't right with this team, and yet they didn't actually do much in the offseason aside from losing Van Fleet for nothing, which hurts them even more, and it's why I have them falling in the standings from last year. 13 through 15, I've got the Wizards, Pistons, and Hornets in that order. The Wizards, yeah, Poole will go off and average an insane amount of points, but they're not going to be good. The Pistons, I actually think they'll be better than most people think. I mean, most folks have them dead last in the entire NBA, but with the return of Cade Cunningham, the great young pieces they have with Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, and of course, their most recent lottery pick in Asur Thompson, I think they're going to be a young, fast, hungry team. But the Hornets, I mean, this team is going to be a disaster. I don't care how healthy LaMelo Ball is. With everything going on with this team, all of the off-court issues, the lack of talent, yeah, they're going to be last in the East. You guys let me know what you think, though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.